The rain had started just as Daniel Carter turned his car onto the quiet suburban street. The windshield wipers moved back and forth with a dull rhythm, pushing away the thin streams of water that blurred the world outside. It had been a long business trip, 3 exhausting days away from home, and all Daniel wanted was to walk through his front door, see his little daughter Lily, and finally rest. Being a single father hadn't been easy. Since his wife passed away 3 years earlier, life had become a constant balancing act between work and raising his 6-year-old daughter. There were nights he stayed awake worrying if he was doing enough, if Lily missed her mother too much, if he was failing at something he didn't even realize yet. That was why he had hired Maria. Maria had been working in the house for almost a year. She cleaned, cooked sometimes, and most importantly, helped watch Lily when Daniel's work ran late. She was quiet, respectful, and always seemed grateful for the job. Lily adored her. Daniel trusted her enough to give her a spare key to the house. Still, tonight he hadn't told anyone he was coming home early. His meeting in Chicago had ended sooner than expected, and instead of staying the extra night as planned, he caught the first flight back. He wanted to surprise Lily with breakfast in the morning. Daniel parked his car in the driveway and grabbed his suitcase from the back seat. The house lights were dim, which made sense. It was already past midnight. As he stepped inside, the familiar smell of home wrapped around him. The faint scent of lavender cleaning spray, warm wood, and something sweet that lingered in the air. Everything looked neat and quiet. He smiled slightly. Maria must have already gone home. Daniel quietly walked down the hallway toward Lily's room. He opened the door just enough to peek inside. Lily was fast asleep, curled under her blanket, clutching the stuffed bunny she had loved since she was a baby. Her small chest rose and fell peacefully. Daniel felt the usual wave of relief wash over him. She was safe. He gently closed the door and headed toward his own bedroom. His shoulders ached from travel, and all he wanted now was sleep. But the moment he opened the door, he froze. Someone was in his bed. For a second, Daniel thought his exhausted mind was playing tricks on him. But the dim bedside lamp revealed a figure lying beneath the covers. It was Maria. She was asleep, curled on one side of the bed as if she had collapsed there from pure exhaustion. Daniel's first reaction was shock. Why would she be sleeping here? His mind raced through possibilities. Maybe she had felt sick. Maybe something had happened in the house. Maybe Lily had been scared and Maria stayed close. But something felt strange. Maria wasn't just lying on top of the bed. She was fully under the blanket, her head resting on his pillow. Daniel took a slow step into the room, his confusion growing with every passing second. Then he noticed something that made his heart skip. Beside the bed on the floor was a small pile of papers. Drawings. Lily's drawings. Daniel picked one up slowly. It showed a picture of 3 people standing together holding hands. One was clearly Lily, one was Daniel, and the third person had long dark hair. Underneath the drawing, Lily had written in her uneven handwriting, "My family." Daniel frowned slightly. Why had Lily drawn Maria as part of the family? He turned toward the bed again. Maria stirred slightly but didn't wake. There were faint dark circles under her eyes, and even in sleep she looked tired, deeply tired. Daniel hesitated before speaking. "Maria." She didn't respond. He said her name again, a little louder. Her eyes opened suddenly, and the moment she saw him standing there, her entire body jerked upright in panic. "Mr. Carter." Her face drained of color. I'm so sorry," she stammered quickly, scrambling out of the bed. I didn't think you'd be home tonight." Daniel raised a hand gently. "Relax," he said, though his voice still carried confusion. "What's going on?" Maria looked down at the floor, her hands trembling. "I can explain," she whispered. but the look in her eyes told Daniel something was very wrong. And whatever the explanation was, it wasn't simple. Maria stood in the middle of the room, unable to meet Daniel's eyes. The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Finally, Daniel pulled a chair from the corner of the room and sat down. "Start from the beginning," he said calmly. Maria nodded slowly. "I didn't mean to sleep here," she said softly. "I was just very tired." Daniel glanced at the drawings again. "Why were you in my room?" Maria hesitated. Then she sighed. "Because Lily asked me to." Daniel frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Maria swallowed. "Tonight she had a nightmare," she explained. "She woke up crying and kept calling for you." Daniel's chest tightened. "Did you tell her I'd be home tomorrow?" "Yes," Maria said, "but she wouldn't calm down. She kept saying she missed you." Daniel looked down at the floor. Guilt quietly crept into his chest. He had been traveling more lately. Maybe more than he should. Maria continued carefully. "I stayed with her in her room for a while, but she was still scared. Then she asked if we could sleep in your room because she said it felt safer there." Daniel blinked. "She said that?" Maria nodded. "She said it smells like you." Daniel didn't know whether to laugh or feel heartbroken. "So Lily came here?" he asked. Maria shook her head. "She fell asleep before we could move her. I carried her back to bed." Daniel's confusion deepened. "Then why didn't you go home after?" Maria hesitated again. This time the silence felt heavier. "There's something else," she said. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "What?" Maria's voice dropped almost to a whisper. "I didn't want to leave Lily alone tonight." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Why?" Maria looked up at him for the first time. Fear flickered across her face. "Because someone was outside the house earlier." Daniel stood up instantly. "What?" "I wasn't sure," Maria said quickly. "But when I took the trash out around 9, I saw a man standing near the street." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Did he say anything?" "No," Maria said, "but he was watching the house." "Did you call the police?" "I thought maybe I was imagining it," she said quietly. "But later, Lily said she heard someone walking outside her window." Daniel felt a cold wave run through his body. "Why didn't you call me?" "I didn't want to worry you while you were traveling," Maria said. "And after Lily fell asleep, I stayed awake for a while watching the cameras." Daniel looked toward the hallway. "You checked the security system?" Maria nodded. "There was movement near the backyard around 10. Daniel's jaw tightened. "And?" Maria hesitated. And then it stopped. Daniel walked toward the window and pulled the curtain slightly aside. The rain had become heavier, turning the yard into a blur of shadows. "Why didn't you wake the neighbors or call someone?" he asked. Maria looked down. "I thought if I stayed here, nothing bad would happen." Daniel turned back to her. "You stayed to protect my daughter." Maria didn't respond. She didn't need to. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. Then he looked at the drawings again. "Lily made these tonight." Maria nodded. "She was drawing while waiting for you." Daniel picked up the picture, labeled "My Family." For the first time, he noticed something he had missed earlier. There were actually 4 figures in the drawing. Lily, Daniel, Maria, and another small child standing beside Maria. Daniel looked up. "Who is this?" Maria's face went pale again. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered something that made Daniel's heart stop. "That's my son." Daniel stared at her. "You have a child?" Maria nodded slowly. "Yes." "Where is he?" Maria looked toward the window. In the car. Daniel blinked. In the car. She nodded. I couldn't leave him alone at home tonight. Daniel's confusion exploded. Maria, why didn't you tell me you had a child? Tears suddenly filled her eyes. Because I was afraid you wouldn't hire me. Daniel felt a strange heaviness settle in the room. But he still didn't know the truth. Not yet. And the biggest shock was still coming. The rain outside had turned into a steady storm by the time Maria finished speaking. Daniel stood by the window, absorbing what she had just told him. Her son was 7 years old. His name was Mateo. And for nearly the entire year she had worked in Daniel's home, Maria had been hiding the fact that she was also a single parent. I didn't lie because I wanted to, she said quietly, sitting on the edge of the chair. I lied because I needed the job. Daniel looked back at her. Where does he stay when you work? With my neighbor most days, she replied, but tonight she wasn't home. So you brought him here? Maria nodded. He's asleep in the car. Daniel stared at her, disbelief mixing with concern. In the middle of a storm. Maria wiped her eyes. I parked close to the porch. I check on him often. Without another word, Daniel grabbed his jacket and headed toward the door. Maria quickly followed. The rain hit them immediately as they stepped outside. Daniel walked quickly to the driveway where Maria's old car was parked. Through the fogged window, he saw a small boy curled up in the back seat under a blanket. Daniel gently opened the door. The boy stirred slightly but didn't wake. Daniel stood there silently for a moment. A child, sleeping in a car, while his mother worked inside someone else's house. Daniel felt something twist inside his chest. He closed the door softly and turned back toward Maria. You've been doing this all year. Maria nodded weakly. Sometimes. Why didn't you ask for help? Daniel asked. She looked down. Because people don't usually help people like me. Those words lingered in the cold air between them. Daniel suddenly understood something he hadn't seen before. Maria wasn't just tired from cleaning houses. She was exhausted from carrying an entire life alone. Just like he was. They walked back inside. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel finally broke the silence. Bring Mateo inside. Maria looked up, startled. What? He shouldn't sleep in a car, Daniel said. Her eyes widened. But, it's not a question, Daniel said gently. Bring him in. Maria rushed outside again, returning moments later with the sleepy little boy wrapped in the blanket. Mateo clung quietly to his mother's shoulder, half awake and confused. Daniel crouched down to his level. Hey there, he said softly. The boy blinked at him. Maria spoke gently to her son in Spanish, reassuring him. Then Daniel stood and thought for a moment. Lily's room has a second bed, he said. He can sleep there tonight. Maria's eyes filled with tears again. You don't have to do this. I know, Daniel replied. But he did it anyway. They quietly placed Mateo in the small guest bed beside Lily's. The two children slept peacefully, unaware of the complicated adult world surrounding them. When the door closed again, Maria looked overwhelmed. I don't know how to thank you. Daniel leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You protected my daughter tonight. Maria didn't respond. You stayed when you could have left, he continued. That matters. She wiped her eyes again. I was just doing my job. Daniel shook his head. No, you were doing something more. He glanced toward Lily's room. Then he looked back at Maria. You know, Lily thinks you're part of the family. Maria gave a small sad smile. I saw the drawing. Daniel held up the paper. And maybe she's not wrong. Maria looked at him in confusion. What do you mean? Daniel sighed. For the past 3 years, I've been trying to raise Lily alone. I thought asking for help meant I was failing. Maria listened quietly. But tonight, Daniel said, I realized something. He looked toward the hallway where the two children slept. Maybe none of us were meant to do this alone. Maria's eyes filled again. For the first time that night, the tension in the house seemed to ease. The storm outside slowly faded. And inside the quiet home, something unexpected had begun forming. Not just trust, not just gratitude, but the beginning of something that neither of them had planned, yet both of them might have needed all along.